Okay, this is Dr. Stephen Cangiano. I am the president and co-founder of RD&T Media and Events with its online companions, relationship-development.com, and an upcoming online companion, humanity-upgrade.com. I have the pleasure to welcome two of our distinguished authors, Linda and Charlie Bloom. I've gotten to know Linda and Charlie over the last 2, 3, 4 months. Beautiful people. They live what they teach. So let me do a brief introduction, and then we're going to hear from them shortly. Linda and Charlie have been a couple since 1968. In September, they will be celebrating 50 years of committed relationship. They both have graduate degrees in clinical social work. They have been working in the field of relationship counseling since 1975 and have been teaching workshops and seminars together throughout the country internationally since 1986. They have been lecturers and faculty members at many learning centers and institutions of higher learning, including the Esalen Institute, the Kripalu Center of Yoga and Health, the Omega Institute, University of California, Berkeley Extension, Antioch University, Multiversity 1440, and many others. They have co-authored 4 books, including the bestseller, 101 Things I Wish I Knew When I Got Married, Simple Lessons to Make Love Last. Over 100,000 copies sold. Their recently published book, That Which Doesn't Kill Us, How One Couple Got Stronger at the Broken Places, was released in April of 2018. Charlie and Linda have 2 grown children, 3 precious and precocious, not so grown grandsons who keep them thrilled, laughing, and on their toes. They live in beautiful Santa Cruz on the California Central Coast. And I just found out as we were talking ahead of time, they're going to celebrate their 50th birthday anniversary in September at a seminar. That's actually beautiful. So, Linda and Charlie, you have an unbelievable career, an unbelievable vast network of knowledge. I'd love for us over the next 25 to 30 minutes to really tap into what are the essentials, the key insights that we can get from your unbelievable experience. So let's start with one of the articles you really go into. Knowledge isn't necessarily the problem for most people, not just in relationships, but in all of life. I mean, we know we need to work out. We know that we need to do these things, but how do we span the gap between knowledge and right action, between knowledge and application? Let's start there.
Well, thank you for inviting us, Steve, and thanks for that question. It's one that comes up a lot in the work that we do with couples. And I think the first thing to know is that there is a gap between understanding and result. And what it requires in order to bridge that gap is the recognition that knowledge isn't enough. We think that if I know what to do, then I'm going to be able to just do it. I mean, I'm a rational human being. I know what works. I've learned this. And what we found is that simply having an understanding of what needs to be done, what's going to improve the quality of my relationship, isn't necessarily going to do it. And the reason for that is because what we're up against isn't just a lack of understanding. What we're up against is a series of deeply embedded, reinforced patterns of behavior that have become integrated into our whole way of being. And so we're predisposed to continue to do what we've been doing, even though our rational mind thinks or realizes that that's not going to help. Doing more of what doesn't work is not going to get you to what does work. But we can't help it until we neutralize some of those old patterns. And so what happens in relationship is, and most people find this out sooner or later, is that you're going to bring out the very best and the worst in each other. And that's why relationships are such an incredibly valuable place to do the work of getting free from the old dysfunctional patterns that we have developed as defenses to protect ourselves against pain, fear, loss, and the things that we don't really enjoy. So, so the work really has to do with being able to stop reinforcing the old patterns, and when we do that, to replace them. But we can't replace them. We can't overlay them with positive patterns until the old ones have released their grip on us. And that's part of the work that, when we talk about relationships take work, and you've got to do your own work. That's the work, and that's what we're challenged with when we get into a committed partnership. That stuff is going to come up. It's going to, and the good news about that is that it gives us access to it. We can recognize it, and then we can recognize how it is that we can neutralize some of those patterns, how we can recognize them before they possess us, how we can interrupt them so that we're not simply reinforcing them.
Mm-hmm. Let me, that reminds me of, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the most common patterns is that one or the other spouse always wants to be right. Mm-hmm. And they'd rather be right than sometimes be happy. They'd rather be right than be in a healthy relationship. Is that a common pattern? And if so, which I think it is, how do you help people overcome something like that?
I never heard of that pattern before, Steve. Some people would actually rather be right than be happy. Gee, I don't know. Have you ever heard that one before?
Actually, it is so common, and it is really destructive when people get so attached to the way they see it as the way that it is, and try to force that. It's aggressive when they try to force that onto their partner. Because nobody wants to feel wrong. Everybody wants to feel right. Everybody wants to feel that there's spaciousness in their relationship, to have differing points of view. And I see that an insistence on my way is the right way, and I'm right and you're not, as an outgrowth of some painful experiences in that person's past, where they maybe were criticized or judged in their family, maybe they felt insecure in their family, and so they're busy protecting their territory because they don't want to feel shamed and blamed and made bad and wrong anymore, and they carry that wound from the past. And sometimes very unwittingly, they don't realize how destructive it is in their present relationship, that it's destructive with their relationship with their kids because they're handing down yet another generation of make wrong and feeling, insecure, and that there isn't the spaciousness, the expansiveness for differing points of view, differing orientations, differing styles of being in the world, and making room for it all. When people start to see how they're shooting themselves in the foot by keeping this pattern going, just the realization of it is an important beginning, but it isn't going to break the habit just like that because you realize that you're carrying on a tradition from your family. You have to be willing to be guilty of the sin of outdoing your family of origin, because we all have these invisible loyalties to our family. That's so unconscious. But we talk a lot when we teach and when we work with our couples about enlightened self-interest. When you can appeal to somebody's enlightened self-interest and they see that they're going to be happier, their partner's going to be happier, everybody in their family is going to be happier, the motivation to break the old habits of insisting on being right, they start to crumble away. It's like a old dried up snake skin that you've outgrown. You don't need to stand so rigidly. And then when somebody says something that you don't agree with, you might be silent. You listen respectfully. Your silence does not mean that you're agreeing with the way they see it. It just means that you're holding a differing point of view with respect. And relationships will begin to rise to a higher level of well-being point of view with respect to seeing that.
All right, beautiful, beautiful. So I want to tackle a couple of difficult issues in the beginning, and then we're going to go through into some of the fun stuff. So another difficult issue is this being right, and then people get into this pattern of defensiveness, and then they actually can often quite honestly get into this crisis. And now one thing that you mentioned, which I found amazing, is that people don't seek counseling typically for 5 or 6 years, and they typically come to people like you when they're in crisis. How do you help those people, and then what do you recommend to be more proactive and preventive in a relationship?
Yeah, I know that is a really troubling statistic. I know the average amount of time that a couple is dealing with difficulties unsuccessfully is 6 years before they get help, and a huge portion of those people who have waited that long, by the time they get to that point, they have really eroded so much of the goodwill in the relationship that it's very, very difficult and sometimes not even possible to restore the level of support and trust that they've lost. So, why do people wait that long? A lot of reasons, but one of the big ones is denial. They just don't want to accept the reality that their efforts are not sufficient to deal with the challenge that they've got in front of them. And the ego hates that. We want to be able to do things without getting help. We don't want to be vulnerable at that level, and so there's a strong tendency in many of us to just be living in hope that maybe somehow magically things are going to get better. Maybe he's going to change. Maybe the situation is going to reverse itself somehow. It's magical thinking. The real question is, have you really given this your best shot? Have you really given all you can? Have you made the effort that it's going to require on your part to bring about the condition that you want to have in the relationship? And if you've really done that, if you've really done all the things that you really know you can do, I mean, we've all got limits, but have you done that, and have you accepted the limits that you have, and you've reached that point where trying to repair the relationship is actually bringing about the opposite result. Sometimes when you're in that state and you're really frustrated and disappointed and resentful, sometimes at that level, trying to talk about it and doing more of the same only makes it worse.
Interesting. Yeah, let's stay with that for a second. So that's really interesting. Couple in crisis, the first thing, correct me if I'm wrong, the first thing they need to do is de-escalate. How would you recommend, besides going to account, how would you recommend somebody listen to this? How do they de-escalate that seemingly intractable void of conflict that they're in?
When people come to us, the fear level is extremely high. They're so tense. They've been thinking these dismal, defeatist thoughts that I'm partnered with somebody who's impossible to deal with. There's no way out of this trap. I'm afraid that we're going to break up. Or even worse, I'm afraid that I'm going to stay in this relationship and I'll never get my needs met, and I'm going to stay here, but I'm going to be unhappy. And so the first thing we have to do to de-escalate is to be a stand for the possibility. And we have a very personal style of teaching and a personal style. We reveal some shadow material of when we almost lost our partnership, fortunately many years ago, and that every couple has some irreconcilable differences. You need to make a distinction between the ones that you just need to leave some space for those. They're never really going to be much different. But the other ones, do you know that they have a learning deficit? It's not pathological on their part or their partner's part, but we didn't get good models, most of us in our family of origin, about how to negotiate for our needs, how to have a fair fight, how to be emotionally connected to each other, how to speak our truth without blame and judgment. And as soon as they start to see that there's a way out of the trap, that they're not imprisoned there, the anxiety level starts to go down. Then they can hear, then they can speak more openly. It breaks my heart that people wait so long before they ask for help. It also breaks my heart that most of the people who get divorced never even went for one marriage counseling session. And there are a lot of really good marriage counselors out there. So I think it speaks to the skepticism, the distrust that a lot of people have about marriage counseling, and they are caught in their belief that nobody can help me. My clergy can't help me. I don't have anybody in my family who can help me. There's no counselor out there that can help me, and that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because we often, over the 4 decades that we've been seeing couples, see people whose relationships are a train wreck. But if they have some motivation, do you know, if they have some fire in the belly, if they have a good work ethic and they're willing to open to what they offer, their relationship just in a matter of weeks can start to feel so workable and begin to flourish again. They can, maybe they haven't had sex for a year or 2 or a few. They start to make love with each other. They start to share some very deeply intimate things about themselves that they had been reticent to share for fear that the other person might use it against them in an argument. And they begin to, really turn the energy that had gotten sour and bitter to start sweeten up. So sometimes people just need some guidance and to feel hope. Do you know that there are possibilities for me? And I see what I've been doing to get in my own way, and I can make those changes. So if people have, got a good work ethic, willing to roll up their sleeves and get to work, really amazing things are apt to happen. And when both people start really rolling up their sleeves and getting to work and taking responsibility, not pointing the finger of blame at the other person, then things really start to unfold.
Beautiful. Yeah. So a couple of themes are coming through here is that this is relationship-development.com. That's not a mistake. In my and my wife Carmen's position is that relationships are the most important aspect of your life, the greatest benefit, and this has been proven in many, many studies, the Grant study, for instance, that it is the most important aspect of your life, and nobody has a relationship school, or very few people go to relationship school. It's all organic from the family. So let's just go down this road, and this is the last difficult thing we want to talk about, because we really want to talk about relationship success. When is it time? When do you know? When are the signs that, hey, maybe this is it? Maybe we should move on. It's better for both of us. It's better for the kid, for all those considered. When do you, what's the litmus test, or what are the thresholds that you see that you might say, hey, guys, maybe it's time to move on, if that happens in your career here?
Well, yeah, that's the $1,000,000 question, and that's probably the question we get more often than any other one. And there is no external benchmark that will tell you, okay, I have done what I need to do, and now I know with absolute certainty that we have to call it quits. We have to look not so much at the outside, but look within ourselves to answer the question that I raised a little bit earlier. Have I truly given this my very best shot? Have I really done everything that I can do that holds the possibility of improving this relationship? Have I learned what I needed to learn? Have I put into practice the things that I know are going to make a difference? Have I dealt with my own fears and resentments honestly? Am I withholding anything from my partner? I mean, to really look at those things with a very honest eye and to answer them truthfully. And if the answer is yes, I really have done everything that I feel like I can do. I've even tried to bring people in, and my partner, for example, isn't willing to do, to involve somebody else. If I really answer that question honestly and the answer is yes, then I really have to start seriously thinking about, is it damaging my own well-being? Is this at a point now where I'm actually beginning to harm myself by trying to do something that obviously is not, my efforts are not being responded to in ways that tell me that we're both on the same page or it's really working. So if I get to that point and I realize that it ain't happening, then I really have to seriously look at that question. And the question itself is very powerful, because what it'll do is it will enlighten me. It'll bring into my own awareness what it is that does need to, is necessary, and help me to see that. So I might see, well, actually, there are some things that I haven't been really honest with my partner about, because I'm afraid that she's going to get upset, or I'm afraid that I'm going to hurt his feelings, or whatever. And honesty and integrity are the foundations of all relationships. If you don't have honesty, you cannot have trust. And if you don't have trust, you don't have a relationship. You've got
arrangement.
You've got an arrangement that is not grounded in reality. It's grounded in illusion. So, that's a question that I think both partners really have to honestly confront, because there really are truly some actual mismatches. And sometimes it really isn't. We don't always assume that our job is to get people to stay together. Sometimes it's, really to help them to see whether or not, and if so, how can this relationship, is this meant to continue? And if it isn't, we don't ever make that decision. Neither Linda or I have ever told a couple what they should do in terms of staying together or not. That's something that we have always found, that if people keep being honest with themselves and each other, it will become clear.
Beautiful. That, Charlie, that is one of the best answers I've heard on that topic, and I really appreciate you being so candid about it. So a couple of things are coming through. We didn't have a relationship school, and relationships are probably one of the best experiences of our life, to know ourselves, to knock off the rough edges. Young couple, what would be your recommendations for them to starting out to maintain a co-creative, sustainable, long-term relationship?
Well, I think it's so important for people to have a firm and unabiding commitment to their own personal growth, to have a commitment to being aware and awake, to not be on automatic pilot. You can't ever put your relationship on cruise control. You're liable to veer off the road. So if people are stepping up to become a mature, responsible adult, they are poised to have an ongoing, continuous, thriving relationship. And when life will give challenges and ordeals, as it will do if you live long enough, there's going to be some kind of a health challenge, or just natural maturation, having children, growing older, financial difficulties, sometimes professional challenges. You are fortified as your own sturdy, mature adult self to be able to handle the challenges that life brings you. And if both people in the couple are committed to that, they have a relationship that is strong, and then they can meet the challenges that life will deal, whether it's the challenges with each other, because people change over time, or the challenges outside of the relationship that may come from whatever form it is. And so I think it's really important to cultivate the qualities that make up a mature, responsible adult, of self-discipline, do you know, of being conscientious and thorough, of being patient and forgiving, accepting, non-judgmental, to be those, evolve into those beautiful qualities that we can be. And if both people are doing that, that is poised for success.
That, that is your first recommendation is to work on the self. That is, I love that. That is, and then, so we could probably do this for hours. Let's go to a couple of really important things. The first, as it comes to mind, what is the most common mindset that young people have going into a marriage that doesn't set them up? What is if you have one mindset they could change or transform, what would you recommend? What would that be?
Something that they go into marriage with that's kind of setting them up for problems.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, one of the first things that comes to mind for me, and we wrote a book, our third book. It's called Happily Ever After and 39 Other Myths About Love. It's to not believe everything you think.
Okay, keep going. I like it.
So we tend to operate, we human beings, as though what we think is the truth with a capital T, and that, of course, this is the way it is. We don't question some of our assumptions. We don't even see them as assumptions. We just see them as reality, as the truth. So what I always encourage people to do is to simply, and this is one of my other favorite bumper stickers besides don't believe everything you think, is to question authority. I like that bumper sticker because what it reminds me of is that even the so-called experts in the world who have been promoting certain ideas, that's not always necessarily true. But to think for yourself, to really check in, and it seems paradoxical to question what you think, but at the same time, trust your own instincts and your own judgment. It's not, because there's two different parts of the brain. There's the left brain that is much, and I'm not a scientist, but this is really from a layman's perspective. But there's the left brain, which is more organized towards specific, detailed facts, and to accept that. But then there's also this part of us that doesn't get enough attention, which is our intuitive, instinctual self, that isn't always right, but we have to consider both of those things. So to get back to your question, to be open to really go into each moment with what the Buddhists call the child's mind, and to be open to learning from that, to not grab onto certain fixed, rigid ideas, but to be open to considering other possible ways of seeing things and doing things. Mm-hmm. And when you get into a relationship, you're going to be faced with that challenge on a daily basis, because guess what? You've chosen somebody who is bringing a different worldview into your life. And the two of you are going to have to deal with and negotiate those things on an ongoing basis. So if you can't do that, you are setting yourself up for disaster.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to give an example. I find that when very young people, are first in relationship, one of the things that they are attached to, the belief, and they don't even realize they're attached, is just because we love each other, everything's going to work out just fine. Everything's just going to flow from the love. And I was so, young and inexperienced when I first got with Charlie. I believed that romantic myth. I loved him so much. I could tell that he loved me. I thought everything's going to be fine. The trust is strong right now. It's just to get better and better and better. I was so naive. And I think that this is typical, not just of young women who buy into the romantic myth, but also young men.
Well, the Beatles even wrote a song about it called All You Need Is Love.
Yeah, they got a lot of things right, but they didn't get that right. And I had to be knocked around in life a little bit, to jar me awake that we need skills. We need to cultivate a skill set, communication skills, to assert ourselves, to speak up in our own behalf, to learn how to balance the relationship so that their needs are just as important as our needs, not more important than our needs, but not less important than our needs. A lot of us didn't grow up in families where we saw anybody negotiating for their needs. They had scripts put in their hand. The woman does this, the man does this, the wife does this, the husband does this. And our time requires, the age we're living in now, much more negotiating for our needs and problem solving. And so all these skills, all these qualities that we need to practice regularly are a requirement. And love is fabulous. That's a powerhouse of energy there, but it's not the whole thing. We need the skills in addition to the love.
I love one of the quotes from one of your articles. It says, differences are inevitable, conflicts are optional.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. So we could talk for hours. This is great. I want to get to what I think is probably one of the most, that we talk about mindset skill. I think you call it listening with non-judgment, and I have a different term for what I call listening from not knowing, just like suspending all the judgments. Would you say that listening is the most critical skill in relationship? And if so, what can you kind of expound on what healthy listening is?
Yes, I'm with you completely, Steve, in terms of the significance and the power of deep committed listening. And committed listening means listening with your whole being, not simply taking in the words or understanding what the person's saying, although of course that's essential. But deep listening, committed listening, really has to do with taking all other distractions and concerns off the table so that you are fully present with the other person to really hear not only the content of the words that they're saying, but the feeling underneath it, the context from which they're saying, so that you can actually hear what their underlying experience is. That's where true connection occurs. And the word communication, when we hear it, we think of, well, I want to be a good communicator. I want to be able to speak articulately, and I want to be able to express myself. But that's only half of the equation. And I think it's even the less significant than the listening part of it, because the listening part of it is absolutely necessary for communication to occur. Communication, the word communication, the base of that word is common. So communication means to be standing on common ground with another person, to really be sharing that same experience, so that when I speak, you not only understand what I'm saying, but you are with me. We are one. The question that, really has to be confronted, I think, is why is it so hard to listen? And because so many of us have a lot of trouble listening. First of all, our primary commitment is not at that time to listen, particularly if there's an issue between us. What our primary concern is getting what we need taking care of ourselves, protecting ourselves from the anticipation of having to fend off negative input from the other person. So we're preparing to respond to them if we are listening at all. That's what we're listening to. We're listening to our inner strategy to deal with what is coming or what we anticipate is going to come. So we have to, first of all, soothe and manage and calm down the anxiety that's causing us to be distracted from hearing that person, and take responsibility for putting that aside for the time being so that I can really hear what you're saying, and to trust that if I don't anticipate what you're saying, if I really am willing to hear you fully, that's the best preparation I can do to respond to you. Because if I don't, I'm not even responding to you. I'm responding to the anxious thoughts in my mind that I think I have to quell in some way. So yeah, listening is incredibly important, and we have to learn how to be good listeners. It seems like, well, anybody knows how to listen. Not at the level that we're talking about. And this level is necessary to really have a relationship that thrives.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the way you put that. It's like there's a deep yearning for everybody to be heard and understood.
Yes.
The only way to do that is to listen. And most people are talking at you, not talking with you. It's really, really, really good. All right, a lot of takeaways here. We're going to bring this in to a close soon. Is there anything that I should have asked, or any really important topics on your mind right now that you want to discuss with the viewers?
I feel it's so important to drive the point home that we get most of our well-being from our closest relationships. If we're blessed to have a spouse, a partner, a lover, that is so precious. A lot of people wish they had one and they don't. Do you know? And to stop to take a moment to realize that we're blessed. Even though we have our little kinky places, we have our flaws, we have our neurotic, sore spots, but still in all, that if we have somebody that we live with, it is precious, it is a blessing, and that we mustn't take that for granted. And that can inspire us to rise up to be our best self, to bring to that partnership. Because, we teach classes in happiness as well. We teach a course called The Art of Joyful Living and another one called Thriving. All the people that we respect in the field of positive psychology say the same thing. You get the biggest bang for your buck for your closest relationships. And the marriage advantage is huge in terms of not just emotional and psychological well-being, but also health and longevity. When people start to connect the dots, I think they're really careful with their relationship, to be generous of spirit, to let go, to clear things, to forgive, to really show up in the relationship in a meaningful way. As you were saying, to listen well. And I always prompt the people that I work with in counseling, in my seminars, that every day, daily practice to really show up, to be there with your caring, open, generous heart is not too much. And to commit yourself, it's not just for their well-being, it's for yourself. It's every act of generosity, every time you say I love you, every time you do an act of service, cook a meal, wash a dish, fold the laundry, pick up a sock. All of those things count to really sweeten our life up. And I think sometimes people don't really appreciate how all those little things really make a difference. And to be a gracious receiver when they're coming our way.
Linda, that was beautiful. We are going to end it there. I don't know if anybody could have said it better anywhere, anytime. That was really, really wonderful. Love you guys. You're absolutely phenomenal. We're glad that we have this time to be together, to interact together. I hope we can do it again. And This is Dr. Stephen Cangiano for RD&T Meeting and Events, Online Companion, relationship-development.com. These are the type of resources, the type of people that are involved here. Please join us. Please get involved. Tremendous resources for you, your family, your life. Have a great day.